Have you ever found yourself waiting for someone else to rescue you? Hoping that if enough people notice your struggles, life will suddenly become easier. This habit of seeking sympathy or relying on others to fix your problems is deeply human, but in Buddhism, it's also a path to suffering. The Buddha taught that we are responsible for our own liberation, our own peace, and our own actions. Waiting for sympathy keeps you trapped in attachment and craving. Waiting for someone else to save you delays your awakening. True transformation begins when you take responsibility for your life, when you stop seeking comfort and start taking mindful action. Today we will explore 7 powerful lessons rooted in Buddhist wisdom to help you stop expecting others to save you and start walking the path of self-reliance and inner freedom. 1. Understand the nature of suffering. The first step on the path to self-reliance and mindful action is to truly understand the nature of suffering, or dukkha, as the Buddha called it. In Buddhist teachings, dukkha is not just physical pain or obvious distress. It is a deep and pervasive sense of dissatisfaction that underlies all of life. It is the subtle unease that arises when things are not exactly as we want them to be. It manifests in anxiety, disappointment, frustration, and the endless desire for comfort, recognition, or support. Understanding dukkha is not about pessimism. It is about seeing life clearly and honestly so that we can act wisely rather than cling to illusions. One of the most common ways people experience dukkha is by relying on others for emotional relief. When we seek sympathy, attention, or validation from others, we are essentially outsourcing our own happiness. We hope that someone else will notice our pain, acknowledge it, or offer comfort that we cannot give ourselves. While this is natural, human beings are social and relational by nature. It becomes a source of suffering when we depend on it. Why? Because people cannot consistently meet our expectations. They cannot always understand the depth of our struggles, and they cannot always act in ways that ease our discomfort. Expecting them to do so creates a cycle of longing, disappointment, and frustration. This is where the concept of attachment becomes crucial. Attachment in Buddhism is not just about clinging to objects or people. It also includes clinging to ideas, identities, and emotional states. When you wait for sympathy, you are attaching to the belief that others must provide relief. You are saying, my peace, my comfort, my validation must come from outside of me. But external conditions are impermanent. People change, circumstances shift, and the support you rely on may not arrive or may come in ways you do not expect. The more you cling to these external sources, the more you are setting yourself up for suffering. Recognizing this is the first step toward liberation. It is important to understand that suffering is not a punishment or a flaw within you. It is a natural result of clinging and craving. The Buddha taught that craving arises whenever we desire things to be different than they are, or seek happiness in places where it cannot be sustained. Wanting someone else to solve our problems, to validate our feelings, or to rescue us from our struggles is a subtle form of craving. It is a form of attachment to outcomes we cannot fully control. The more we allow this craving to guide us, the deeper the sense of dissatisfaction grows. So, how do we begin to move beyond this form of suffering? The first step is mindful observation. Start by noticing the moments when you seek sympathy. Pay attention to the thoughts and emotions that arise. Do you feel frustrated when no one notices your struggle? Do you feel anxious or powerless when support is not forthcoming? Observe these reactions without judgment. See them clearly for what they are, patterns of attachment and reliance on external factors. This act of observation, without condemnation, is itself a form of liberation because it creates space between your awareness and your habitual responses. Once you can observe these patterns, you can begin to understand their impermanent and unreliable nature. People may respond with sympathy sometimes, and sometimes they may not. Even when sympathy is given, It is often fleeting and cannot fundamentally solve the underlying issues you face. By relying on it, you are entrusting your well-being to something unstable and transient. This understanding does not lead to cynicism, it leads to clarity. You begin to see that the power to relieve your suffering lies not in the hands of others, but within your own mind and your own actions. At this point, you can start cultivating a more skillful response to suffering. Instead of asking others to alleviate your discomfort, you can take responsibility for it yourself. This does not mean isolation or rejecting human connection. It means acknowledging that while others may offer help, they are not your source of liberation. Your source is mindful action, self-awareness, and wisdom. By taking responsibility for your own life, you stop reinforcing attachment and start creating the conditions for genuine peace. Another key aspect of understanding suffering is recognizing the connection between expectation and disappointment. Much of the suffering caused by seeking sympathy comes from expecting a particular response. We expect others to understand, to comfort, or to validate us in ways that match our imagined ideal. When reality does not align with this expectation, frustration and resentment arise. The Buddha taught that suffering is rooted in this gap between expectation and reality. By reducing our attachment to how others should behave or respond, we reduce unnecessary suffering. Acceptance of what is without craving for external validation is a powerful step toward freedom. Finally, understanding dukkha is not just an intellectual exercise, it is a lived experience. Meditation, reflection, and mindful observation are essential tools. Sit quietly and notice your reactions when you seek sympathy or feel dependent on others. Ask yourself, what am I clinging to? What am I hoping someone else will provide? Can I take responsibility for this feeling? Can I act skillfully instead of waiting passively? Through consistent practice, you will notice a gradual shift. The compulsion to seek external validation weakens, and a sense of inner stability and self-reliance begins to grow. In summary, understanding the nature of suffering is the foundation for stopping the habit of seeking sympathy. It involves seeing clearly how reliance on others creates attachment and dissatisfaction. It requires mindful observation of your own patterns, recognition of the impermanent and unreliable nature of external support, and the willingness to take responsibility for your own well-being. By doing so, you do not reject human connection, but you stop allowing it to control your inner peace. The Buddha's teaching on dukkha guides us to the truth that liberation is found not in the sympathy of others, but in the mindful, intentional actions of our own lives. When you truly understand this, the first and most important step toward freedom is taken. 2. Recognize impermanence. The second essential step in freeing yourself from the habit of seeking sympathy and relying on others is to deeply understand impermanence, or anicca, one of the core teachings of the Buddha. Everything in life is transient. People, circumstances, emotions, relationships, possessions, even our own thoughts and desires. This is not a bleak or depressing truth, it is liberating. When you fully recognize impermanence, you stop clinging to unstable sources of comfort, and you start rooting your life in what you can truly cultivate, your own awareness, actions, and wisdom. One of the most common traps that lead people to seek sympathy is the illusion of permanence. We imagine that others will always be there to support us, that relationships are unchanging, or that our pain is a fixed reality requiring external intervention. We act as though people's responses to us, the comfort they provide, or the attention they give are stable and guaranteed. But the truth is far different. People change, situations shift, support may come sometimes, but it may not come the next time you need it. Even when sympathy is offered, it is fleeting and cannot fundamentally resolve the suffering that arises from within. Recognizing impermanence allows you to see that reliance on external factors is inherently fragile. The Buddha taught that suffering often arises from clinging to what is impermanent. By holding tightly to the idea that someone else must validate or save us, we are resisting the natural flow of life. Expecting permanence in an impermanent world is a subtle but powerful cause of frustration, disappointment, and despair. Every time you feel dependent on another person's sympathy, notice how fleeting it is and how quickly it passes. This recognition is not meant to induce fear or isolation. It is meant to bring clarity and freedom. When you understand that nothing external lasts, you stop expecting others to provide what they cannot guarantee. Impermanence also applies to your own emotions and internal states. Just as external circumstances shift, so too do the feelings of helplessness, sadness, or frustration that often drive you to seek sympathy. The Buddha taught that all phenomena, whether internal or external, arise and pass. If you cling to a painful emotion and wait for someone else to ease it, you are resisting its natural movement. Instead, you can learn to observe it mindfully, recognizing that it too will change. This awareness of internal impermanence empowers you to face challenges without being dependent on external rescue. You can witness difficult emotions without being controlled by them, allowing you to act wisely rather than react habitually. Understanding impermanence also cultivates appreciation for the present moment. Often, people seeking sympathy are focused on a future where someone will finally notice their suffering or provide relief. They live in expectation, waiting for external validation to arrive. This attachment to imagined futures distracts from what is actually available to them in the here and now, their own capacity for action, reflection, and mindful choice. By recognizing impermanence, you learn to anchor yourself in the present, taking responsibility for the actions you can perform in this moment, instead of waiting for conditions that may never materialize. Another way impermanence transforms your understanding of reliance on others is by highlighting the unpredictability of life. People cannot consistently behave as we wish, and circumstances can change without warning. Relying on them for emotional stability or problem-solving is like building a house on sand. By internalizing the truth of anicca, you begin to see the futility of expecting external permanence. This does not mean you reject human connection. Rather, it means you stop making your peace or happiness dependent on it. You learn to engage with the world skillfully, appreciating support when it comes, but never depending on it as a source of liberation. Meditation and mindful reflection are essential tools for recognizing impermanence in your daily life. Take a few minutes each day to observe the transient nature of your thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations. Notice how moods change, how pain comes and goes, how the desire for sympathy rises and falls. Observe the impermanence of external events, the way people speak, the way circumstances shift, the way support may appear and disappear. By repeatedly witnessing this impermanence, you begin to weaken the habitual attachment that drives dependency on others. This consistent awareness trains your mind to accept change as natural rather than threatening, freeing you from the illusion that stability must come from someone else. Finally, recognizing impermanence leads to empowerment. When you understand that nothing external is permanent, you realize that your interactions and awareness are the most reliable sources of stability. Your own mindfulness, patience, compassion, and wisdom are always available, even when external conditions are unstable. Instead of waiting for someone to save you, you can cultivate resilience within yourself. You begin to see life's challenges as opportunities to strengthen your own mind, rather than as problems that must be solved by others. In this way, impermanence becomes not a source of fear, but a doorway to freedom, self-reliance, and deeper understanding. In summary, recognizing impermanence is a critical lesson for anyone who seeks to stop depending on others for support or sympathy. It teaches you that everything outside yourself, people, circumstances, emotions, and external comforts, is transient. By deeply understanding this truth, you stop clinging to unstable sources of relief and start rooting your well-being in your own mindful awareness and intentional action. Impermanence is not a reason to isolate yourself or reject help. It is a reason to cultivate inner stability, self-reliance, and the wisdom to act skillfully in every moment. When you internalize this teaching, you no longer wait passively for someone else to save you. You create the conditions for your own liberation here and now. 3. Cultivate self-awareness. The third step in freeing yourself from the habit of seeking sympathy and relying on others is cultivating self-awareness, or mindfulness of the mind and its patterns. In Buddhism, self-awareness is not merely observing your thoughts. It is understanding the causes and conditions of your actions, your emotions, and your habitual responses. Without self-awareness, we move through life unconsciously, repeating patterns that lead to suffering, including the tendency to look outward for comfort or validation. By developing a clear understanding of our own mind, we gain the ability to act intentionally rather than reactively, and we take the first steps toward true freedom. Many people seek sympathy because they have not yet developed the capacity to recognize the emotional and mental habits that drive this need. It often begins unconsciously. We feel pain, discomfort, or a sense of inadequacy, and without reflection, we turn to others for relief. Over time, this pattern becomes ingrained. We may not even realize how often our thoughts circle back to wanting someone else to notice us, to offer reassurance, or to make our lives easier. Self-awareness allows us to observe these patterns, recognize their influence, and choose a different course. It is the foundation of self-reliance because it illuminates the mechanisms of our own mind. Self-awareness begins with honest observation. Buddhist meditation practices are particularly effective for this, but it can also be cultivated in daily life through mindful attention. Notice the moments when you feel the urge to seek sympathy. What emotions arise in your body? Is it frustration, fear, sadness, or perhaps shame? What thoughts accompany these emotions? Do you tell yourself that life is unfair or that no one understands you? By observing these mental and emotional patterns without judgment, you create a distance between yourself and your habitual reactions. This distance is critical. It allows you to respond consciously rather than being pulled automatically into seeking external validation. One of the key aspects of self-awareness is recognizing the subtle forms of attachment and craving that underlie the desire for sympathy. When we depend on others for relief, we are often clinging to the idea that we cannot handle our own difficulties. We may unconsciously believe that external comfort is more real or reliable than our own inner resources. By cultivating self-awareness, we begin to see these beliefs for what they are: conditioned mental habits that can be changed. Awareness exposes the illusion that others are the ultimate source of our well-being, revealing instead that our mind, when trained, can be a stable and reliable refuge. Self-awareness also allows us to identify triggers. Certain situations, conversations, or even memories may provoke the urge to seek sympathy. Perhaps a particular relationship consistently triggers feelings of inadequacy, or a stressful event automatically makes you long for external comfort. By noticing these triggers mindfully, you can prepare yourself to respond differently. Instead of immediately looking outward for validation, you can pause, breathe, and consider how to act skillfully. This pause is powerful because it breaks the automatic chain of dependency and opens the door to intentional action. Developing self-awareness also involves reflecting on the consequences of your habitual patterns. When you constantly seek sympathy, how does it affect your relationships, your emotional state, and your own growth. Often seeking validation from others reinforces feelings of helplessness and keeps you stuck in a cycle of dependency. Self-awareness brings clarity. It allows you to see that these patterns, while familiar and comforting in a certain way, actually prevent you from cultivating inner strength and resilience. Recognizing the cost of these habits motivates you to take responsibility for your own well-being. Another crucial aspect of self-awareness is understanding the impermanence of your emotions and thoughts. Just as external circumstances change, so do your inner states. Anxiety, sadness, frustration, or the desire for sympathy are not fixed. They arise, exist for a time, and pass away. By being aware of this impermanence, you no longer feel compelled to act impulsively on these emotions. Instead, you can observe them, understand their nature, and respond with clarity. This mindful observation allows you to replace reactive patterns with intentional, skillful action that supports your growth rather than reinforcing dependency. Self-awareness also fosters compassion toward yourself. Many people seeking sympathy feel unworthy or helpless, and this self-judgment often intensifies the desire for external comfort. By observing your thoughts and emotions with mindfulness, you cultivate a gentle, non-judgmental awareness. You begin to understand that the urge to seek sympathy is a natural response, not a flaw. This compassionate awareness reduces self-criticism and provides a stable foundation from which to act responsibly. It is through this combination of insight and compassion that self-awareness becomes transformative. Finally, self-awareness is not a static state. It is a continuous practice. Life presents new challenges, and old habits can re-emerge if we are not attentive. By consistently observing your mind and recognizing the subtle urges to depend on others, you maintain the clarity necessary to act independently. Meditation, reflection, journaling, or simply mindful attention to daily experiences are all tools that support this practice. Over time, self-awareness becomes second nature, and the habit of seeking sympathy naturally diminishes. You begin to respond to life with skillful action rather than unconscious dependency. In summary, cultivating self-awareness is essential for anyone seeking to stop relying on others for support or sympathy. It allows you to observe the patterns, emotions, and triggers that drive dependency, recognize the impermanent nature of your mental and emotional states, and take responsibility for your own well-being. Through mindful observation, reflection, and continuous practice, self-awareness becomes a powerful tool that transforms habitual reactions into intentional action. When you develop this clarity, you no longer wait for others to save you. Instead, you awaken to the truth that your own mind is the most reliable source of stability, guidance, and liberation. 4. Practice personal responsibility. The fourth step in freeing yourself from the habit of seeking sympathy and relying on others is practicing personal responsibility. In Buddhism, personal responsibility is deeply connected to the concept of karma. Our actions shape our experiences, and the choices we make determine the course of our lives. This means that no one else can live your life for you, solve your problems for you, or carry your burdens. Liberation, peace, and self-reliance are found in acknowledging your role in your own life and consciously choosing how to act. Many people habitually look outside themselves for relief, comfort, or validation because they have not fully recognized their own power and agency. It is far easier to wait for someone else to intervene than to face challenges directly. Seeking sympathy can feel comforting because it shifts responsibility onto another person. Yet in the long run, this only strengthens dependence and reinforces suffering. Personal responsibility, on the other hand, is empowering. It means embracing the truth that while you cannot control everything, you can always choose how to respond, how to act, and how to cultivate your own peace. Practicing personal responsibility begins with awareness. You must honestly assess which areas of your life you have control over and which you do not. You cannot control the thoughts or actions of others, the circumstances that arise in your environment, or the reactions people may have to your struggles. What you can control, however, is your own mind, your actions, and your responses. By focusing on these areas, you shift from a reactive, dependent state to a proactive, empowered state. You begin to act skillfully, guided by wisdom rather than seeking rescue or reassurance from outside sources. This does not mean rejecting help or isolating yourself. In Buddhism, interdependence is acknowledged. Support, guidance, and encouragement can be valuable, but these should never replace personal effort. Help from others can be a tool, but it is not a substitute for taking responsibility for your own life. Waiting for someone else to save you is a form of avoidance. Personal responsibility requires that you confront challenges head-on, recognizing that your liberation and growth are ultimately in your hands. A practical way to cultivate personal responsibility is to examine the decisions you make daily. Every choice, no matter how small, contributes to the trajectory of your life. How do you respond to difficulties, setbacks, or criticism? Do you look outward for comfort, or do you ask yourself how you can skillfully address the situation? By consistently evaluating your choices, you strengthen your ability to act with intention rather than react impulsively. Responsibility grows through repetition and conscious attention, becoming a habit that naturally replaces dependency. Another key aspect of personal responsibility is understanding the consequences of inaction. When you wait for someone else to solve your problems, you give away control over your life. You may experience delays, disappointment, or frustration when external support does not arrive as expected. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we ignore our own role in shaping our experiences. By taking responsibility, you accept that your choices matter and that your actions have consequences. This awareness motivates you to act rather than remain passive. Personal responsibility also requires cultivating courage. Facing your own challenges without relying on sympathy or external validation can feel uncomfortable or even frightening. You may fear failure, rejection, or judgment. However, Buddhism teaches that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act skillfully despite it. When you embrace personal responsibility, you acknowledge that your peace and growth are in your own hands, and you develop the courage to act consistently, even when the path is difficult. This courage is transformative, because it breaks the cycle of dependency and passivity. Furthermore, practicing personal responsibility strengthens inner freedom. Dependency on others ties your well-being to forces outside your control, leaving you vulnerable to disappointment and suffering. Personal responsibility anchors your sense of stability within yourself. You become less swayed by the opinions, actions, or neglect of others, and you cultivate a mind that is resilient, steady, and capable of responding skillfully to life as it unfolds. The Buddha emphasized that true liberation is found in self-reliance, freedom from attachment to external conditions, and the ability to act wisely in the present moment. Reflection and meditation are crucial tools for deepening this practice. Take time to contemplate the areas of your life where you habitually seek sympathy or rely on others for support. Ask yourself, which of these situations am I able to influence through my own actions? Where have I given away my power by waiting for someone else to intervene? Through meditation, journaling, or mindful reflection, you cultivate insight into your patterns and create space for intentional, responsible action. This conscious practice gradually replaces habitual dependency with skillful agency. In summary, practicing personal responsibility is a fundamental step in freeing yourself from the need for sympathy or external rescue. It involves acknowledging your own power, accepting that your actions shape your life, and choosing to respond skillfully rather than waiting passively for others. Personal responsibility is not a burden. It is a form of empowerment. It allows you to cultivate courage, resilience, and inner freedom, transforming dependency into agency. By embracing this principle, you begin to experience life as a field of opportunity for mindful action, growth, and liberation, no longer bound by the expectation that someone else must save you. 5. Develop equanimity. The fifth essential step in freeing yourself from the habit of seeking sympathy and relying on others is developing equanimity or mental balance. Equanimity, known in Pali as upekkha, is one of the Brahma Viharas, the four sublime states in Buddhism, and it is the quality of mind that allows you to remain steady, calm, and unshaken amidst the inevitable ups and downs of life. It is not indifference or emotional numbness. Instead, it is the ability to face joy and suffering, praise and criticism, gain and loss, without being overwhelmed or controlled by them. Equanimity is a cornerstone of self-reliance because it frees you from the emotional turbulence that drives the need for sympathy and external validation. Many people seek sympathy because their minds are unbalanced. When circumstances are challenging or emotions run high, they look outward for comfort, reassurance, or approval. This habit arises from the inability to sit with discomfort, frustration, or uncertainty. Equanimity teaches us that while life inevitably presents difficulties, our peace does not have to depend on how others respond to us or whether they notice our suffering. By cultivating a mind that is steady and unshaken, we reduce the compulsion to rely on external validation and begin to find stability within ourselves. Developing equanimity begins with mindfulness and observation. Start by noticing your emotional reactions as they arise. When you feel hurt, ignored, frustrated, or inadequate, do not immediately act on these emotions by seeking sympathy. Instead, pause and observe what is happening in my mind and body. What thoughts accompany this feeling? How intense is it? By observing your reactions without judgment or the need to suppress them, you create space for equanimity to grow. Awareness allows you to see that emotions are temporary and do not have to dictate your behavior. A deeper understanding of impermanence reinforces equanimity. Life is a constant flow of changing circumstances, sensations, and emotions. People may respond with empathy, or they may not. Support may appear when expected, or it may fail to materialize. By internalizing this truth, you begin to let go of the expectation that external conditions must meet your desires. Equanimity arises when you accept that both pleasure and pain, praise and criticism come and go, and your peace does not depend on clinging to any of them. This does not make you cold or detached. It makes you free, because your sense of stability is rooted in your own awareness rather than the unpredictable reactions of others. Equanimity also requires training the mind to respond to challenges skillfully. When faced with criticism, rejection, or disappointment, the habitual response is often to feel hurt and seek comfort from someone else. With equanimity, you learn to respond differently. You observe the situation clearly, understand what is within your control, and act intentionally rather than reactively. You no longer collapse emotionally when events do not go as expected, and you do not inflate your happiness or self-worth based on external praise. This steady-minded approach reduces suffering and strengthens independence because your emotional state becomes less dependent on the outside world. Meditation is a powerful tool for developing equanimity. In Buddhist practice, meditations such as metta loving kindness and vipassana insight meditation are often combined to cultivate balance of mind. By observing thoughts and emotions with non-judgmental awareness, you learn to see their impermanent and conditioned nature. You realize that no external condition, has the power to define your inner state permanently. Over time, the mind naturally becomes less reactive, and equanimity develops as a stable habit rather than a forced effort. Daily practice is crucial because life continually presents new challenges, and equanimity must be strengthened like a muscle through repeated experience and reflection. Another important aspect of equanimity is understanding interdependence without falling into dependency. Buddhism teaches that everything arises in relation to other things. Your circumstances, relationships, and experiences are connected to countless conditions. However, interdependence is different from reliance. You are supported by the world, but no one can carry your responsibilities for you. Equanimity allows you to engage with life compassionately and skillfully, appreciating support when it is offered, but not clinging to it as a lifeline. You cultivate gratitude without dependence, allowing you to participate fully in life while remaining emotionally stable and self-reliant. Equanimity also helps you face suffering as an opportunity for growth rather than a reason for complaint or seeking sympathy. Challenges, setbacks, and criticism can become mirrors, reflecting patterns of attachment, expectation, and dependence. A mind grounded in equanimity does not collapse under discomfort, but uses it as a teacher. You learn to observe your reactions, understand your habitual patterns, and act skillfully. This perspective transforms suffering into practice. Every difficulty becomes a chance to cultivate patience, resilience, and clarity. Over time, the need to look outward for sympathy diminishes because your inner stability has become a reliable refuge. Developing equanimity also strengthens compassion, both for yourself and for others. When you are no longer overwhelmed by emotional turbulence, you can respond to the suffering of others without losing balance. You can offer help when appropriate, but without expecting anything in return. Compassion rooted in equanimity is pure. It does not depend on recognition, validation, or praise. This kind of compassion arises naturally when the mind is steady, clear, and free from clinging. It demonstrates that equanimity does not lead to cold detachment. It leads to skillful engagement with life. Equanimity is, in essence, the antidote to seeking sympathy. When your mind is balanced, steady, and self-reliant, you no longer feel the urgent need for external reassurance. You can face life's uncertainties with calmness, patience, and clarity. You respond to challenges intentionally, rather than reacting impulsively. You understand that your inner stability is cultivated through your own awareness and actions, not the recognition or support of others. Equanimity frees you from emotional dependency and anchors your sense of peace within your own mind. In summary, developing equanimity is essential for anyone seeking to stop relying on others for comfort or sympathy. It allows you to remain steady amidst life's inevitable ups and downs, reducing the emotional turbulence that drives dependency. Through mindfulness, meditation, and reflection, you learn to observe your thoughts, emotions, and reactions without being controlled by them. You cultivate resilience, patience, and clarity, transforming suffering into opportunity. Equanimity empowers you to engage with life compassionately, act intentionally, and maintain your peace independently. When you develop this mental balance, you no longer wait for sympathy or external validation. You find stability, freedom, and liberation within yourself. 6. Transform challenges into practice. The sixth step in freeing yourself from the habit of seeking sympathy and relying on others is to transform challenges into practice. In Buddhism, life is not simply a series of random events to be endured. It is a field of opportunity for developing wisdom, patience, compassion, and self-mastery. Every difficulty you encounter, every setback, every moment of discomfort is not an obstacle to be escaped, but a teacher to be understood. When you shift your perspective in this way, you move from dependency to self-reliance, from passivity to mindful action, and from suffering to growth. Most people instinctively react to challenges by seeking comfort, reassurance, or sympathy from others. When we face problems, our first impulse is often to look outside ourselves for relief. We may hope that someone will understand our pain, solve our difficulties, or provide support that we cannot generate internally. This pattern is understandable, but it reinforces dependence and limits personal growth. Buddhism teaches that true liberation comes from skillful engagement with life's difficulties, not avoidance or external rescue. When you learn to see challenges as practice, you stop waiting for others to save you and start cultivating your own inner strength. Transforming challenges into practice begins with observation and acceptance. When a problem arises, notice your initial emotional reaction. Do you feel frustrated, angry, fearful, or helpless? Do you immediately look for someone else to intervene? Observe these responses without judgment, understanding that they are conditioned habits arising from past experience and attachment. Acceptance does not mean passivity. It means seeing the situation clearly as it is, without adding layers of expectation or resentment. This clarity creates a foundation for mindful action. Once you observe and accept a challenge, the next step is to examine your response with intention. Ask yourself, what can I do in this moment to act skillfully? What is within my control and what is not? Buddhism teaches that suffering often arises not from the challenge itself, but from our unskillful reactions, our craving, clinging, and aversion. By focusing on your own actions, you reclaim agency and reduce dependence on others. This practice transforms the challenge into an opportunity for developing patience, resilience, and discernment. One of the most profound aspects of this approach is the reframing of suffering as a teacher. Difficulties illuminate patterns of attachment, expectation, and dependency that are otherwise hidden. For example, when you feel the urge to seek sympathy, it often reveals areas of fear, insecurity, or resistance within your mind. By confronting these feelings instead of outsourcing them to others, you gain insight into your habitual tendencies. Each challenge becomes a mirror reflecting your internal states, providing invaluable information for personal growth and spiritual development. Meditation and mindfulness are essential tools for transforming challenges into practice. In moments of difficulty, bring your attention to the present moment, observing sensations, emotions, and thoughts with clarity. Notice how discomfort arises and passes, how attachment and craving drive habitual reactions, and how the mind can remain balanced through awareness. Techniques such as breath meditation, body scans, or mindful reflection allow you to cultivate a grounded presence, turning each challenge into a laboratory for developing equanimity and insight. Over time, this practice strengthens your resilience, reduces dependency, and fosters greater self-mastery. Patience is a key skill developed through this practice. Challenges often provoke impatience or the desire for immediate relief, which can intensify the impulse to seek sympathy. Buddhism teaches that patience is not passive resignation, but active endurance combined with awareness. By patiently observing difficulties, understanding their nature, and responding skillfully, you cultivate inner stability. This patience allows you to face life's hardships without becoming overwhelmed, transforming obstacles into steps along the path of self-reliance and wisdom. Another crucial element is cultivating discernment, or wise understanding. Challenges provide opportunities to test your responses and learn what works and what does not. By reflecting on the outcomes of your actions, you develop insight into your own mind and the causes of suffering. For instance, when faced with a difficult conversation, a setback, or a personal failure, you can ask, did I act with clarity, patience, and skill, or did I react impulsively and seek external support? Each reflection deepens self-knowledge and strengthens the ability to respond consciously in the future. Transforming challenges into practice also involves embracing responsibility for the lessons inherent in every experience. In Buddhism, karma teaches that our actions shape the conditions of our life. Challenges are often the result of past causes and conditions, and they provide opportunities to cultivate virtues such as courage, diligence, and compassion. By seeing challenges as practice, you no longer wait for someone else to intervene. You take ownership of your growth, understanding that every difficulty is a chance to strengthen your mind and deepen your insight. Equally important is integrating compassion into this practice. While challenges are primarily personal opportunities for growth, they also teach empathy and understanding toward others. When you navigate your own difficulties skillfully, you become more capable of responding to the suffering of others with calm, clarity, and compassion. This balance, developing self-reliance while cultivating care for others, is a hallmark of Buddhist practice and reinforces that liberation is both personal and relational. Finally, transforming challenges into practice changes the relationship between suffering and life itself. Life ceases to be something to escape or complain about and becomes instead a dynamic field for cultivation. Every moment, every obstacle, every setback becomes a chance to train your mind, practice mindfulness, and develop the qualities that lead to freedom. By reframing difficulties in this way, you gradually weaken the habit of seeking sympathy because your mind recognizes that true support, comfort, and resolution come from your own awareness, skillful action, and inner development. In summary, transforming challenges into practice is a profound method for reducing dependency on others and cultivating self-reliance. It begins with mindful observation and acceptance of difficulties, followed by intentional, skillful action. Challenges reveal patterns of attachment, expectation, and craving, and provide opportunities to cultivate patience, resilience, equanimity, and compassion. Meditation, reflection, and discernment strengthen this practice, allowing each difficulty to become a teacher rather than a source of suffering. By embracing challenges as practice, you reclaim your agency, cultivate inner stability, and develop the wisdom necessary to navigate life independently. Ultimately, every obstacle becomes a doorway to freedom, and the habit of seeking sympathy diminishes as your mind becomes your own steadfast refuge. 7. Embrace interdependence, not dependence. The seventh and final step in freeing yourself from the habit of seeking sympathy and relying on others is to embrace interdependence without falling into dependence. In Buddhism, interdependence, or pratyasamutpada, the principle of dependent origination, is a foundational teaching. It explains that all phenomena arise in connection with others. Nothing exists in isolation. Every action, thought, and experience is shaped by countless causes and conditions. This principle is not just theoretical, it is practical guidance for how we relate to the world, others, and ourselves. Understanding interdependence helps you stop expecting others to save you while fostering the wisdom to live in a connected, responsible, and empowered way. The key distinction to grasp is the difference between interdependence and dependence. Dependence occurs when we look outside ourselves for emotional stability, validation, or relief, believing that others must provide what we cannot generate internally. This is the habit that drives the desire for sympathy. Interdependence, on the other hand, acknowledges that while we are connected to others and influenced by external conditions, we are ultimately responsible for our own mind, choices, and actions. It allows you to appreciate support and connection without surrendering your inner stability or freedom. Many people fail to distinguish between these two because human beings are naturally relational. It is normal to seek comfort, guidance, or reassurance. However, when these needs become habitual crutches, they limit growth and reinforce a cycle of dependency. We may habitually expect others to recognize our pain, validate our worth, or intervene in our struggles. Buddhism teaches that this expectation is a subtle form of attachment. By internalizing the truth of interdependence, you learn that support exists within a larger network of causes and conditions, but your peace, liberation, and action cannot be outsourced. You remain connected without losing autonomy. Embracing interdependence begins with honest reflection. Notice the ways your mind seeks validation or support from others. When you feel the urge to ask for sympathy, pause and examine it. Ask yourself, am I relying on someone else to solve this problem, comfort me, or affirm my worth? If so, what is within my own control that I can do first? By shifting attention from external dependence to personal responsibility within a network of connections, you cultivate awareness of interdependence. You see that you are supported by circumstances, relationships, and opportunities, but you are not controlled or defined by them. This understanding also deepens your appreciation for others. When you stop expecting them to carry your burdens, you can engage with them with clarity, compassion, and gratitude. You can receive help without clinging, collaborate without attachment, and respond to challenges without projecting your inner needs onto others. Interdependence allows for meaningful connection because it is rooted in mutual respect, not in the unconscious expectation that someone else must save or validate you. In this way, you transform relationships from potential sources of frustration into opportunities for support, learning, and growth. A practical way to cultivate interdependence is through mindful attention to daily interactions. Observe the roles people play in your life, not as providers of validation, but as participants in a shared web of life. Teachers, friends, family, colleagues, they are part of the conditions that make your experience possible, yet they cannot define or fix your mind. Acknowledging this creates freedom. You no longer cling to their attention or approval as a measure of your worth. Instead, you act responsibly, knowing your peace and growth arise primarily from your own awareness and choices. Interdependence also fosters humility. By recognizing that you are shaped by countless conditions, your upbringing, environment, education, and relationships, you become aware of your interconnectedness. Yet this awareness does not translate into helplessness. It is empowering. You see that while you exist within a web of influence, you have the capacity to act skillfully within it. You learn to contribute to the network rather than exploit it for emotional rescue. Humility in this sense is the recognition of both connection and agency. Equally important is the cultivation of compassion, which naturally arises from understanding interdependence. When you recognize that others are also navigating life within the same network of causes and conditions, you develop empathy and patience. You understand that they cannot always meet your expectations or solve your problems. This understanding softens frustration and resentment while reinforcing self-reliance. Compassion, grounded in interdependence, is free from attachment. It is giving without the expectation of receiving, supporting without expecting rescue, and engaging without clinging. Embracing interdependence without dependence also strengthens resilience. Life is unpredictable. Circumstances change, people act unexpectedly, and support may not always be available. By internalizing that your stability cannot rely on external factors, you develop an inner refuge that remains intact regardless of external conditions. Interdependence provides perspective. You are not isolated, but neither are you helplessly bound to the behavior, approval, or intervention of others. Your resilience comes from understanding your place within the network of life and taking skillful action within it. One of the most powerful aspects of this practice is how it transforms challenges into opportunities for growth. When you stop expecting others to save you, every difficulty becomes a chance to exercise skillful action, patience, and insight. By acting responsibly within the interdependent web of life, you cultivate wisdom that benefits both yourself and others. You learn to navigate life with awareness, recognizing that your choices matter and that liberation arises not from external rescue, but from mindful engagement and self-reliance. Finally, embracing interdependence without dependence completes the journey of stopping the need for sympathy. It synthesizes all the previous lessons: awareness of suffering, acceptance of impermanence, self-awareness, personal responsibility, equanimity, and turning challenges into practice. Interdependence teaches that connection does not equal control, support does not equal liberation, and sympathy is never a substitute for action. When you internalize this, you are free to engage with life fully, contribute meaningfully to the world, and maintain your inner peace regardless of external circumstances. You are neither isolated nor helpless. You are aware, responsible, and connected. In summary, embracing interdependence without dependence is the culmination of a Buddhist approach to self-reliance and liberation. It recognizes that all phenomena arise in connection with others, yet it emphasizes that your mind, choices, and actions are ultimately your responsibility. By observing habitual patterns of seeking sympathy, practicing personal responsibility, and cultivating equanimity, you can engage with the world skillfully, appreciating support without clinging to it, participating in life without surrendering autonomy, and responding to challenges with mindfulness. This understanding allows you to live fully connected, yet fully empowered, free from the compulsion to rely on others for emotional rescue, and grounded in the wisdom that liberation is cultivated within your own mind. As we come to the end of these 7 lessons, the message is clear: waiting for sympathy, hoping others will save you, or depending on external validation only keeps you trapped in suffering. Buddhism teaches us that liberation, peace, and true resilience arise from within. By understanding the nature of suffering, embracing impermanence, cultivating self-awareness, practicing personal responsibility, developing equanimity, transforming challenges into practice, and embracing interdependence without dependence, you are learning to take your life fully into your own hands. These teachings are not abstract ideas, they are practical tools for living. They invite you to stop seeking rescue and start creating freedom. Every challenge is an opportunity to awaken, every emotional response a doorway to insight, and every action a chance to strengthen your mind. You are not powerless. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that the mind, when trained with awareness and intention, is a refuge that no one else can give or take away. Stop measuring your worth by the attention or support of others. Stop waiting for someone else to act while your life passes by. Recognize your own power, act with intention, and cultivate inner stability. Support from others may come and go, but the peace and freedom you cultivate within yourself are reliable, enduring, and transformative. Ultimately, the path to liberation is a path of responsibility, awareness, and skillful action. By internalizing these lessons, you can face life's uncertainties with courage, navigate its challenges with wisdom, and engage with others from a place of clarity rather than dependency. You are capable of your own growth, your own healing, and your own freedom. The habit of seeking sympathy is replaced by the confidence of mindful action, the calm of inner equanimity, and the clarity of understanding your interdependent, yet self-reliant, place in the world. So take these teachings into your life. Observe your thoughts, examine your actions, embrace challenges, and act with responsibility. Step away from dependence, embrace your interconnection, and walk the path of liberation that begins within you. Your life is yours to cultivate, and your freedom is yours to realize. Do not wait for someone else to save you. Take the first mindful step yourself, and the journey toward peace, wisdom, and self-reliance has already begun.